Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. I hope you're keeping warm if you're in my northern part of the world where it is well and truly autumn, and that theme is something that I want to explore today with some leaves and my favorite way to paint autumn leaves. Now, I don't just mean one leaf, I mean supposing you've got a whole tangle of them. I'll show you a few examples of what I mean in a second. But there's actually a really quite straightforward way to paint them. And it's fun, which is always good. That's what we're here for. But before we get on to all of that, you know, the housekeeping first. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe and a comment if you have the time. And if you like what you see here and you like my teaching style and the way I go about things, then please consider joining my Patreon, where I'm not just an artist in the background where sort of you pay and never see me. There are lessons. It's an art school. And on my Patreon, all taught in English, I show you how, step by step, how I paint in my mixed media style. So if that's something you think you would like to do for yourself, please come over and visit, link in the description box below, and join us. Right, autumn leaves. Like I said, we can paint autumn leaves either as a single leaf, sort of as a leaf study, or sometimes we put them in a sketch and we need a whole lot of leaves. Now, this is not just for autumn leaves, by the way. The method that I'm going to show you today is good for any time of the year where there are lots and lots of leaves, because leaves, like flowers and grasses and all these other things, when you look at them in a mass, they can look really, really overwhelming and intimidating. And you just look at them and you think, well, where do I start with that? So that's the technique I want to clear up today. Let me just go back through this sketchbook and I'll show you a few areas where I've used this technique. And right off the bat, here's one. Here's another one. And I dare say a lot of these, I've actually got a few of these as tutorials on my Patreon so that you're seeing them here. Here's another one. This is what we're going to look at today. These masses of leaves, not those so much. These a little bit. Definitely these. And I think probably without going much further, you get the idea. This sort of thing as well. So wherever you see these sorts of massed leaves, that's what I want to do today. This one as well. So these sorts of things. There are a few different techniques in here. Just pop my piece of paper back in before I ruin those too, because pressing on things. There are a few different ways of doing this, and a few of the ones that you've seen have got other things added, because there are just so many ways of painting the same subject, which is why art is endlessly fascinating. And like I said, I treat them all individually with my students on my Patreon. Right, we don't need an awful lot of things today, but there are a few things. One is some watercolor, and I'm going to use 2 or 3 different colors to get started. I think today we're going to paint some oak leaves, because they're another thing that make people a little bit nervous because they've got quite an interesting shape. So I'm going to stick with 4 colors, and they are going to be a Holbein Mars Violet, a Winsor & Newton Quinacridone Gold, Schminke Glacier Brown, and Core Transparent Brown Oxide. Now, if you're on my Patreon, there'll be a list, so you don't have to worry about it. Everybody else pencils at the ready. And we're going to have a watercolor pencil to just sketch out some of the actual leaves. I've got some colored pencils here, including 2 of the new Derwent drawing pencils, one in forest. I bought 3 of these in the end. They were completely sold out here where I live in Germany. So I had to pop over the border to the Netherlands and found a wonderful store there, and they had some. So I got 3 of them. And apricot is another really lovely goldy colour. Now, those of you who see me quite regularly will know that I'm addicted to Caput Mortuum in the way some people are addicted to Payne's Grey. Mine is Caput Mortuum Violet, and This is a Faber-Castell Polychromos pencil. This is a Goldfarber Aqua Dual Marker. I've also got a Tombow here because this is an N57, the colour of which is a state secret, but I dare say there's somebody out there who knows what it is. There's always somebody who knows what it is. I'm never one of them. I just look at the number and wish they could write, you know, actually, they've printed all this other stuff. How much more would it have cost to print the name on the barrel? Just in case you're listening. Rant over. Thank you for listening. Seriously, there are lists, and one of my students has an excellent idea to actually write on them in a marker, and one day I might just do that. I've got a an acrylic pencil here and some brushes as well. We don't really need that smaller brush. We need a big brush. This is my almost 30-year-old Liquitex number 10 round brush. As you can see, it's still in pretty good nick. There's a bit of fluffing going on, but the way I paint it really doesn't matter. I've also got a dip pen and I've got some brown ink. I'm using a Raw and Klingner antique traditional ink in dark brown. It's Bister. If you haven't got this, it doesn't matter. Any dark brown will do. But the first thing is to choose your weapons in the watercolor section. So the first thing is I get some water onto the page. So we're just going to print. Yeah, we're not printing, we're paintings. Keep up. Just put some water on the page. I like to wet it. It makes the fibres a little bit more receptive to the watercolour. And as you can see, this is the quinacridone gold. As you can see, these leaves are painted with absolute precision. So very important. I've got a bit of paper here. It's just kitchen wrap, and I basically blot that a little bit. More water. Keep it nice and light. I may not use all 4 colours, actually. Well, I like that one. That's nice. Yeah, so like I said, absolute precision required to paint. So that's really, really important. Oh, gosh, that's the dark one. Don't want too much of the dark one. The overwhelming thing is keep it light and a bit blurry on the outside. That's probably enough leaves for us to be doing. Right, now in order for the next layers, that's it, by the way, that's the leaves painted. It doesn't look like it now, but it will. When you do this, like I said, I just blot bits, especially if they're a bit dark. Allow those veins, allow the patterns to happen, and then dry that completely. The idea of drying it completely is because we are going to come over it now with other layers of different materials. Like I've shown you, we've got coloured pencils, we've got some other markers, we've got all sorts. And a lot of people look at the layers and think, oh, mine doesn't work like that. I've tried painting and then I've tried going over the top with coloured pencil and it doesn't work. Number one reason for that, it's not dry. So we're going to dry that. And if I blow much more hot air over it, it will be dry without me needing to. But I just leave it for a bit, go off and get a drink. Sometimes you can use a hairdryer. I have a heat tool that I use for my card making as well. That's really good. The main thing is get it dry. And then we'll go on to the next bit. Right, so lovely and crispy dry. Now I'm going to come in with my watercolour pencil. The reason I use watercolour pencil is because it can be taken away with a bit of water. You can also erase them with a white eraser, but you can get rid of it. So I've chosen this Sepia 10%. It's Museum Aquarelle by Caran d'Ache because it is sort of toned in with what's there already. So you may have to actually look quite carefully to see what I'm doing. Now, I like to do these leaves as though they're growing on a tree branch, for example. So not sort of just in all sorts of areas, but coming out of some sort of twig. So I'm going to put, like I said, it's quite light and I'm working quite light because I don't want this to be dominant. Now, just some oak shapes. Now, as luck would have it, the watercolour formed an oak shape there. Now, I did not plan that, but I wish I had because it would be really good. That's what we're after, is to have a look at these shapes and use the pareidolia that our brains enjoy doing. And pareidolia simply means looking for shapes. This is why children lie on their backs and look at the sky and imagine dragons and all sorts of things in it. Now we need some this side. Sometimes there won't be a shape, you've got to make one. But we're leaving gaps. So up here, for example, there might be a bit more of this stick. There's another nice one. So we can come up here, use that bit as a total sort of leaf opportunity, shall we say. I don't think leaf opportunity is something I've ever said before, so it's nice that we've got it out the way now. And sometimes you can have another one here in the background because, like I said, they grow together like this. What I might do is leave some of the background as it is so you can see where we started. Now, sometimes the background will overshoot the leaves. You don't have to worry about that. You could put another leaf in here like this and pretend that it's actually growing behind, or you could just leave it. No pun intended. See here, for example, you might have a bit of a leaf that's coming out there and one here as well, and so forth. I'm going to leave the rest of this. All these uses of the word leaf and leave in English is amazing. I'm going to leave the rest of this not with leaves on it, because then, like I said, you can see where we've sort of come from. Now, the next thing I do is I'm going to get my Caput Mortuum pencil, and actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to get the apricot one first. Doesn't matter, but I'm going to go onto my leaves and just sketch the beginnings of some stems and centre veins. Some veins and some centre veins. And these, again, this is not a proper horticultural study of what oak leaves look like. When you're finished, it's going to look like oak leaves, and most people will look at it and say, oh, look, oak leaves. But it's not going to win any prizes for botanical drawing because it's not supposed to. I'm ignoring some of the watercolour marks and the watercolour pencil marks. And I appreciate you probably can't see extremely well what's going on. I will hold that up for you so that you can sort of get a bit more of a fix on it. But yeah, just ignore the marks, because the idea of starting with this beautiful apricot pencil, and this is one of the Derwent Drawing new ones, is that it's very, very similar to the quinacridone gold. And when we go over the top of it with ink, it'll provide this sort of double, a really nice textured double layer. So on the twig as well, a little bit. We've got this other one down here. Not sure where that goes to because there's a twig there. There's a twig there. You just put them in where they will do the most good. That seems to be one as well now. Right, the next thing is to grab one of these. Now, Tombows have got the reputation of being easy to use. They're not always. Sometimes it can look like a 4-year-old's got your things and made marks everywhere. My thing is, make sure you don't use them on the paper because they will grab the paper. So have something in between this and the paper. In this situation, we've got watercolour. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go in and find these little gaps and colour them in and just blend them a little bit with your finger where it's gone in between the leaves. Don't want lines, too many lines, and don't rub too hard because you'll be through the paper. But these are the deepest, darkest areas. If the gap is too big, you may need another bit of leaf in there. And again, I can appreciate that you're not seeing a lot of this yet. I'm not seeing it myself, which is a bit of a bugger because I'm trying to work on it. But just blend it out. Come around the side there. these are the depths that we see in between the leaves, where they're quite dark and there could be something else in the background, like more leaves. That can come down there. See here where this one comes in, colour that a little bit here. And you'll notice that I'm working on very small areas at a time and giving it a good smudge each time. Not so much here in the middle, it's not necessary. But on the edges here, you don't want it being harsh. And it is a little bit harsh. It's that sort of instrument. Like I said, they're always touted as being great for beginners, but they're not easy to use if you want to get a subtle effect. Depends the style of work you're doing, to be fair. A lot of people use them very, very successfully. I'm not one of them. I've got my own way of using them. But this adds another layer and a bit of depth. Like I said, we've already done the leaves. The first layer of blotchiness, that was the leaves. Right, next thing is to get some ink going. And what I'm doing here is, with my dip pen, is going straight in there. Now the first thing is to identify these centre veins. This is no longer as nice and thin and fine as it was, so I should be starting to think about changing the nib. And around the edge as well, especially where it's over the top of another one. Now you'll notice that I'm coming off, I'm not making a great big long harsh line. This ink is quite dark brown. There might be better options. Let's see how we go, but brown is what you're after. And where a leaf overlaps the other, I definitely put a bit of a sort of border, but don't outline it because we're not trying to create a colouring in book. That one's gone a bit weird. It's gone behind the other one. Leaves do that. Don't get mixed up with them. This one. You can also recover a lost shape. For example, here it's gone a bit straight. So make it come out again. Just give your leaf back some of the shape that it's lost with the subsequent layers. And this is what I love about mixed media. You don't have to say, oh look, you know, I've ruined the leaf. Well, fix it with the next layer. I'm putting a lot more variation into the outer edge than these leaves had. And again, I'm ignoring the watercolor marker. The watercolor pencil, sorry. I know it's there, but it's not necessary to follow it exactly. And here's a bit of a, you know, the branch that's coming off. So let's put something on that, a bit thicker there. Just keep going until it's thick enough and come out from it the way branches do. The main thing is to make it look natural. Another main thing would be for me to remember that I'm right-handed. It's not much to remember. And I always tend to go to the wrong side and then get all my hand in the paint. It's extremely satisfying because, like I said, you've already done all the leaves. They were done the minute the watercolour was done. So all the variations that you would find on them are there already. We just now use this for texture. Yeah, here's where I put my hands in the ink, and sure enough I have. Thank goodness I'm working in a sketchbook. And here, come around there, up there. where I have actually put my hand in it, I will simply repair it and pretend it didn't happen. And then I'll turn this so that I'm not in it again. Because repeating mistakes is another specialty of mine. Here it's interesting. I'll show you in a minute when it's up the right way. Because the edge of the watercolor was quite sort of wavy. And I've used that as a bit of damage caused by insects as a rule on the leaf. And the final one, this little guy here. Right, so some leaves. We could leave it at that. But there are other things that we can also do. So we've got one colour down with the Tombow in the background, and we've got the possibility of doing some other things. So let's see what we've got here. We've got a forest green pencil. It's forest, actually, just like the Do It Light Fast version, and oh, I do love it. What we can do is add more texture here into the background. I love to use these on this side because you can get so many really nice effects and different variations. The main thing is don't go on the leaves themselves. We've done that. See, blend it out towards the end here. Also, because it's a waxy pencil, you can actually get a fair few nice effects with your finger because the warmth of your finger is often just enough to blend it out. You can also use it to make the suggestion of other leaves in the background, just with an outline and some sort of veins. I think I've gone too deep too quickly for that, but you can actually do that if you like. The other thing is we have a Caput Mortuum, one of these, and I like to do the same, again, over the top of the whole lot, same way as we did with the Tombow. And that introduces a bit of a warm note here and there. Sometimes, where there's a leaf over the top of another one, you can also use this to go over the top of it and provide some shade and therefore depth. And as you can see, it's extremely precise painting. If you do too much at once, it will dry and it will look really funny. But you can just keep going over it and adding some more ink and use that wet ink then to blend it out properly. Fingers are really useful for painting. It goes in quite dark there. And I like these Tooly Art, wash that. We don't leave, before I start the next bit, we do not leave painting products on our skin. It's the same as breathing them in. Your skin is an organ of absorption, and getting as much off as possible now with a follow-up with hot soapy water later on is a really good idea. I like these Tooly Art acrylic paint pens. They're 0.7mm. And, you know, so really fine and quite precise to use, and a good way of bringing back our twiggy bits here. They will take on some of the colours from the background, especially when you're using a lot of these quite rich inks, these sorts of things especially, but you still get a slight highlight, which is really all we can ask for. Right, and that's about it. I will sometimes also use the pencils on this side to just increase some of the goldy colours on the leaves sometimes, if that's necessary. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's just me fiddling prior to ruining the picture altogether. Sometimes the watercolour goes a little bit on the dead side, so adding a bit of a glow here and there is useful. And it's just all brilliant texture. It's also useful This here, for example, is a little bit harsh. This is waxy. Go over it with the wax, then go back over it with this, and this will smooth out a lot better over the waxy pencil. You can smooth it right into the background. So, for example, this leaf here, this is under this other leaf. So what we can do is go over with the waxy pencil, and that protects the page from your rubbing, because if you rub on a wet page, you'll create little granules. You know, that horrible pilling that you can get, and once that happens, it's pretty much game over. So do that, and then over the top of it, that was a harsh line, get rid of that. Just bits, parts and pieces. So we've got this bit of a little bit of shadow there on that leaf, which gives it depth. Excuse me. This one can have a bit too, different colours. This, see, that's a little bit pale and insipid. We want to bring some of that gold up. And it marries beautifully with the other two colours that we've used. That's a bit on the insipid side as well. By backing off the pressure then, we can sort of get different colour effects on the leaves. Here, that one's a little bit sort of, can't tell which one's on top of the other, so let's go there. And sometimes I'm going off the leaf and onto the background at the same time. And what this does is it sort of blends it all in and brings it into the background. If you've gone a little bit too harsh here, again, consider a bit of coloured pencil over the top of the other coloured pencil. We can do that as well. Just be careful to blend it. Blend, blend, blend. So some of that colour's on the leaves, some of it's behind it. And that works because, don't forget, these are just the leaves you can see. On the tree, there'll also be more leaves behind them that you can't see, but you might be able to see parts and pieces. See, for example, there could be one here, and you might see that just as a bit of a shadow in the background. Just little bits. Follow bits and pieces like that, and you can do a whole painting like that with a few extra bits added on to say, yeah, this story continues. It's not just this bit here, it's what else you can see. But if you do these background ones just with pencil, and this is the Caput Mortuum Violet pencil from Faber-Castell, if you do that, the ones with the ink on them will always be dominant. They'll always stick out more, and that will be your focal point. So that's actually how I achieve those leaves. Oh, there is one more point. This is a really useful thing to have. It is a Derwent brand battery operated eraser. And if you feel you've gone too much with something, you can remove the colour very effectively and thus create a bit of a highlight with this. They're surprisingly inexpensive. So I'm hoping you can sort of, this is a good place to do it. You can sort of see there. Just a bit of removal of colour gives you highlights. This is the tool to do it with. They're surprisingly inexpensive considering their Derwent brand. It's a really nice heavy feel in the hand too. It feels very good to use. And they are, you know, I think this one cost me €12 about 5 years ago. So I'm hoping at this time it's still under about 20 if you're in Europe. But worthwhile. There are other brands as well. I believe they've got an angled one now, which is more precise, but this one's just fine for me. This works. But point is, this is how I achieve my autumn leaves or summer leaves, as you saw in here. That's all autumn, but back here in early autumn, this one was done in August. This one is July. It's the same technique. Sometimes different materials, but mainly the same technique. I don't think, yeah, even these little clovers here and the background of the flowers and everything like that, it doesn't matter. The daisies, This was a technique. This one's a tutorial, I believe, on my Patreon. I believe I did it. It's from June or July this year. So June, actually. So yeah, a way ago. But same technique. Really quite easy, extremely satisfying, well worth practicing, because wherever you need leaves and you just swap the colours out for the time of year, it would work with gouache as well. I don't believe it works quite as well with pure ink straight onto the paper. Gouache and watercolour would be my favourite options. And it's a really good place to use your super granulating watercolours that you may otherwise think, well, you know, it's a pity to use these. I didn't use them at all for ages with my mixed media practice, because I thought there's no point. I'm just going to cover them all up with other layers. So you're not seeing that beautiful granulation or the lovely colours. But actually, you see enough to know that actually, yes, it does work. And we can, in fact, use them. And you can see the granulation. So gouache is another thing. Japanese watercolours would work very well indeed. Anything water-based like that, but not acrylic gouache. This is, when I say gouache, I'm talking about traditional gouache. Acrylic gouache can't be re-wetted, and sometimes you need to, especially if you make a mistake. You need to be able to re-wet them. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. And actually, before I do, I just want to fiddle with something just in the background. I was just going to say, sometimes if you've gone a little bit dark in the background, I don't think I have, I wanted it dark, you can also use the battery operated eraser to bring up other lighter tones, and you can make little ghost leaves in the background to really give your picture depth. You can use this for that too. But I really don't want to. I like it nice and dark. And yeah, that's it, I think. I've done enough damage today. I think it's time I went. Thank you so much for watching. And like I said, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe and a comment if you have the time. And do consider joining my lovely, lovely Patreons. They're the nicest bunch of people in the world and a nice community. So if you want to learn art, that's the place to do it. And incredibly cheap too, if I say so myself. Have a look and you'll see what I mean. I'll see you there. Bye for now. Bye.